Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and completely throw y'all into left field and say that we have Asmongold to talk about right now. And I know that may be surprising for some of you for us to just randomly switch to that, but for others, I'm sure you're used to the torture. Anyway, his video is called This Is Already Happening, and let's see what this is.
They blew up another drug boat. They've been blowing up drug boats for a bit, and it's still going on, right? They've been popping them off for a while. And so there was a report that Pete Hegseth, this is the Department of Defense or War, the guy that's in charge, they bombed them once, and he said double tap that shit because there's still some survivors. We're gonna kill every single one of them. And so apparently...
Why is that a thing people are okay with? Like, I'm just curious, because when you look into this situation, you notice something weird. We haven't proven that these are drug boats. We haven't done investigations into it. We've just gone, yep, that looks kind of like the profile we'd expect, and then we just fucking kill them. I'm just curious. I'm just really curious. Why should the United States have the authority to just select people out in international waters and fucking kill them? Why is that a thing that we should be celebrating us having the power to do? Noble Winter says, isn't Asmon like a very right-wing, hard-on Trump supporter? So he tries to play it off like he's not. He tries to play like he's the enlightened centrist, but the reality is that's not what he's been doing for a while. It's a grift. And make no mistake, around the time that politics as a whole starts to shift into a more left-wing favorable position overall, then he's suddenly going to become a lot more progressive like he was in, you know, before the current Trump presidency. There's a reason why people like Xander Hall were big fans of him. He did not seem like he was that shitty of a person, but now he is because it's politically expedient for him to be. It's a grift. Every streamer understands this cycle. You pick a subject to talk about, or you pick a game to play, you pick something that people are going to watch. And the more that they watch it, the more they respond well to it, you end up doing more and more of that thing. It is the objectively correct thing to do for most streamers' career trajectory. And Asmon, being one of the richest streamers around, he knows the game. He knows it really, really well. The thing is, he is 100% supporting Trump, supporting right-wing ideologies, supporting anti-trans hatred, supporting all that. That is all stuff that he's actively been participating in because it makes him money to do so. So, let's listen to him talk about bombing people and why that's a good thing.
There are people on Twitter that are mad about this. Won't somebody think of the innocent drug dealers in Venezuela?
It's not that people are saying, won't somebody think of the innocent drug dealers in Venezuela? It's that people are rightfully pointing out that we have not done the proper investigations to determine if this is in fact a situation where we should be bombing people willy-fucking-nilly. Like, that's the issue. That's what we've been running into, is that we do not know. We have not done the investigations. And when you start bombing these boats over and over and over again, without doing the proper investigations, guess what's going to happen? You may get some of those boats that are drug boats, but eventually you're just going to fucking hit a civilian vessel that happens to be tricked out. You're just going to end up hitting the exact kind of people that are going to get you on a fucking human rights tribunal. That's what's eventually going to end up happening. The only reason that doesn't tend to happen with the United States is we are, bar none, the most powerful nation on the planet. And because we're the most powerful nation on the planet, we can get away with doing human rights violations. Hellbound says, I don't know, the drug dealers are generally more moral than churches.
Yep, civilian boats, by the way, no proof of drugs, for sure, guys, because, I mean, they're gonna have, see, like, the drug boats have the words drugs on the side of them.
We're learning new details about one of those deadly U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. Sources tell CNN the U.S. military... We're learning new details about one of those deadly U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean.
That's right.
Sources tell CNN the U.S. military carried out a follow-up strike on September 2nd after becoming aware of survivors in the water. The sources tell us that prior to the strike, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth had ordered the military to ensure everyone on board was killed.
Damn.
People briefed on the, quote, double tap strike say they're concerned
They even calling
that it could violate the law of armed conflict, which prohibits the execution of an enemy combatant who is taken out of the fight due to injury or surrender. Now, since September, as you're seeing on your screen here, the U.S. military has carried out at least 21 known strikes on suspected drug trafficking boats, killing at least 83 people. Officials have also acknowledged, though, not knowing the identities of everyone on board before they are struck.
Yep.
And this development comes as President Trump says the U.S. military will soon begin land strikes on alleged drug trafficking networks in Venezuela.
The kill cams, bro, like he's actually...
Okay, I'm just curious here. Does anybody find it entertaining when Asmon is just listening to somebody and just going, yup, that's right, yup, good React content right here, yup, that's right, yup, yup. Like, is that not obnoxious to anybody? I'm just curious. Like, people who actually like watching Asmon's content, do you guys find that, like, endearing? Is that as endearing to you as the goddamn fucking eye wiggles? Anyway. Old Gus says, oh, we're talking military and international law? Yay, my jam. Well, maybe you can give us some context on this, because from my perspective, it seems like this is a violation of international law. When you have an injured combatant, putting them down if they are no longer a combatant is something that we have decided in war is not a good fucking thing. Robbie says, I don't fucking care if they are verified to be drug boats. We should not fire upon them unless we are fired upon. That's another thing. Like, I'm just curious here. How many people really think that the United States is made a significantly better place by attacking these boats than by doing better by the people who are addicted to drugs in the United States? Like, I feel like decriminalizing drugs in general, like cocaine and a lot of the stuff that tends to be brought over, I feel like decriminalizing these things and instead regulating them in a way that they can be consumed recreationally, or that we can have ways to make it to where people have better support networks to get off of these drugs. I feel like those are all far more effective methods of dealing with the drug war, as it were, in the United States than what we currently seem to be doing. Because what we currently seem to be doing is just finding anybody who we think may or may not be part of a cartel, probably, and just throwing a fucking bomb at them. Cyberchill says, if we know where the boats are headed, could we not track them and intercept them at port? That's another thing. Like, if you know where the boats are, if you have a camera trained on them, why would you not intercept them once they get to port and then actually do a sweep of the fucking boat? Why is that not a thing that we are doing here? Why are we choosing to just fucking bomb them? Is it because that's cheaper? Like, is it just cheaper to bomb them? Is that really what it is? Lady Merlin says, ladies and gentlemen, and variations thereon, I give you the party of law and order. Yeah, the party of law and order likes violating laws whenever it's expedient to. That's just kind of how they've operated for damn near all time. Why does that image look AI generated? Because it's smooth. So as more things get AI generated, as we see more things that are AI generated, there are certain things that AI tends to do to make an image visually pleasing. And one of those is hyper smoothness. So now whenever we see somebody who looks hyper smooth, it automatically triggers that part of the brain that says that may be AI. Like that's what's going on there. Axo says, why is that guy so smooth looking? He looks like he hasn't loaded in yet. His textures haven't loaded in, guys. Don't worry. It's fine. It's just his textures. They're not loaded yet. Old Gus says, were Trump smarter, I'd say he's making a realpolitik gamble that a show of force will not be met with diplomatic, economic, and military consequences, not realizing he's sacrificing soft power and international legitimacy. He's not that smart, though, so he's posturing carelessly, of course. And the thing is, Asmongold is not that smart either. He's really good at figuring out the game on YouTube and Twitch. Like, that is where he shines. Absolutely. But when it comes to public policy, the only thing he knows how to do is do something that he gets good feedback for. And he gets a cheat code for that. When you have an audience who's listening to you all the time, you can kind of feel out what's going to react, like what's going to have that audience reacting well to you. You can feel that out in real time. It's a PR cheat code. And I know this because I'm a streamer who definitely uses that PR cheat code. I know when I've pissed off my audience. I know exactly when I've pissed off my audience because y'all let me know. People say that they're unsubscribing, or people say that they're leaving, or people argue with me in chat, and that's a very good indicator that I've maybe stepped on a toe or two. Asmon knows that baseline, quote, common sense reactions to things work very, very well with his audience. So he leans into that more and more and more. So we've had a bunch of these strikes on alleged alleged drug vessels. But note that many of these strikes on these vessels still have not been confirmed as to whether or not they are actually on drug vessels. The strikes are all part of a larger strategy to target what are called narco-terrorists. That's another thing that's interesting. So, terrorism, the word terrorism means to use violence or intimidation to affect somebody politically. That's what the word terrorism means. Galactic Streamlord, thank you for the follow. And because that's what the word terrorism means, the idea of somebody being a narco-terrorist seems kind of nonsensical, because who are they talking about? Who are they trying to threaten violently to change their political opinions? Like, outside of maybe saying that they're threatening people who are in power to try to keep international drug laws as they are because those make them a lot of money. Like, that's the closest I could see, maybe. But narco-terrorists, this just seems like taking people from the United States who freak out about the word terrorism and have freaked out about that word since 2001. It seems like a way to try to reinvigorate those people, to try to get those people talking more and more and more specifically, because we have a reaction to the word terrorist. We have since we got hit in 9/11. But of specific interest to Trump is targeting Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan gang that has administration designated as a foreign terrorist organization in January. In dozens of speeches since taking office, Trump has accused Tren de Aragua of violent criminal activity within the United States. Such organizations torture, maim, mutilate, and murder with impunity. So again, I do not doubt that that is happening, that we live in a world where that can 100% be a true statement. But simply being a true statement does not mean that you can then go carte blanche and start fucking over every other person that you see potentially come across the border, or bomb them before they ever get there. Like, honestly, it feels like the right thing to do would be to have security, like armed security from the United States checking in these vessels. If we can see them off our coast, then we can react to them in real time. That is a thing we have the privilege to do as the United States, as the richest country in the world with a satellite network that can do gangbusters. We should be able to do that. And instead, we are taking the easy option of just throwing bombs there and just hoping God sorts it out, I guess. Legal scholars question whether the executive branch actually has the unilateral authority to even launch these attacks in international waters without an authorization of force from Congress. The administration claims it does have the authority, and that the president has said he doesn't need a congressional declaration of war. There have also been reports that these strikes have endangered and killed civilians. Colombian President Gustavo Petro accused the U.S. of murdering a Colombian fisherman with no ties to drug smuggling at all in a September strike. Relations between the U.S. and some Latin America countries have already begun to strain since Trump took office, and this latest high-profile military operation in the region marks a significant further erosion. So, despite the fact that Roach King McGee here wants to tell us that this is a good thing, and oh no, don't worry, they're definitely all drug boats. Again, like I said, this is a ticking time bomb on an international stage. This is the kind of thing that you can only engage in for a certain amount of time before you end up hitting a fucking civilian. When you have a carte blanche response to boats coming from a particular area, just fucking bombing them, you're gonna hit a civilian, you're gonna cause an international crisis, and we are going to be seen as the perpetrators of that fucking crisis. And it will be our fault as a nation. Axo says, I'm sorry, that guy looks like a default setting for a black guy in a character customizer. Oh my god. Jesus.
Be posting kill cams. Yeah, think of the drug dealers.
In Beth Sanner, a CNN national security analyst and former deputy director of national intelligence. Thank you for taking the time. I just want to start with getting your reaction to the reporting we have here that double tap strikes were ordered to make sure everybody on board was killed.
Right.
Well, yeah.
If this is
Of
true,
course.
Yeah.
it's really shocking.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me too, bro. We had a limp dick military for such a long time. We had a bunch of...
Did we really have a limp dick military for such a long time? Also, why should we be happy about just wasting United States resources on fucking bombing people? Like, why is that a thing we celebrate? Like, I just have to wonder, is it just the fascist thing? Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say Asmongold's a fascist. Like, that's not my take. I don't think he's intelligent enough to understand how to even be a political ideology. But it feels like the standard fucking fascist thing where you celebrate action for action's sake, you celebrate machismo, and you celebrate strength over everything else, and you piss on weakness whenever you have an opportunity. That's what this feels like. And again, those are just the things that a fascist does, because those are some of the signifiers Umberto Eco pointed out when he was doing his essays on what the fuck a fascist is in the first place.
Pussy boys pussyfooting around over in the Middle East, wasting our money, spending trillions of dollars to replace the Taliban with the Taliban. And that's it. And
then shouldn't you be celebrating Biden getting us out of the Middle East? Because he put a stop to that. He took us out of the Middle East. Also, you understand that us spending a bunch of money in another country, irrespective of what it's for, but us spending a lot of money in another country is not in and of itself a bad thing. There's a word for that. It's United States soft power. It is a way that we classically have maintained control across from our own borders. We influence people around us. We influence places around us. We influence countries around us. And we do it specifically so that we don't have to get involved militarily every fucking place. Again, that's just military soft power. That's a normal thing that we've been engaging in for years. Cyberchill says, I swear for so many people, cruelty is the point. I was told so much as a kid why the cops kill instead of taking targets alive is because it's a risk to an officer and risk of maiming the subject, so better to kill than maim. And now I see that now it seems it's better to maim than kill them while they're wounded, then laugh and point at the pain and suffering. Yeah, like, I don't think it's that people have gotten more cruel. I think people have always had this capacity inside them. People have always been this cruel in general. At the same time, I feel like the internet, and by extension, our current administration, have given people the pass to showcase their cruelty. You get people who used to get entertained by using a magnifying glass on fucking ants or like beating the shit out of a cat. You get those people who don't have an outlet outside of stuff that society deems very, very in poor taste. You get those people and you get them to back a political movement, and now suddenly they don't have to just be mean to the cat. They can just fucking join ICE. Clueless says their answer is just blood for the blood god. Old Gus says, 1, no, 2, even a limp dick military is better than a wet dick military because the most frequent way they're getting wet is war crimes. Yeah, and that seems to be what's going on right now. The United States is engaging in a series of potential war crimes. And that does nothing but hurt us as a nation. That doesn't help us. It affects our soft power, our ability to negotiate, and even when we get a Democratic president in that is going to try to undo a lot of these things, A lot of those strains are going to be there forever because anybody who deals with the United States will understand that in 4 to 8 years after they make any deal with us, we're just going to get another Donald Trump in and ruin whatever deal that we've set up before. Because we have now, as a nation, with the president that we have celebrated ruining our position on the world stage so that we can make a fucking fool of ourselves. And we celebrate it unintelligently because we, for some reason, think that it's a show of power. Sylvie says, I was the kid who enjoyed abusing animals. Now I can't even bear the thought of nature being nature and watching a cat catch a mouse, for example, or even bear the thought of feeding a snake to a mouse. And I love snakes, but I also love mice too. Hey, people grow. Seffi says, humans as a whole, we have equal parts good and evil, depending on the individual, and sadly, the bad has tipped the scales, if you ask me. I think it's just that people have more of an outlet now. I think that's what it is. People have more of an outlet for the cruelty, but the cruelty was always there.
Finally, we have some people that are ready to actually do something. Thank God. Shut down CNN. Yeah, exactly. Do you think it's okay to execute? Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Why does he think that it's okay to execute people? That's a thing. That's a thing that I've always been curious about. Those of you who are pro-death penalty, why do you believe that our elected officials should have a monopoly on violence? Why is that a thing that you believe in? Why do you believe that the state, as an apparatus, should have the carte blanche ability to murder people as citizens of either our nation or other nations? Why is that a thing that you believe the government will hold responsibly? Because it's this weird paradigm. It's this weird paradigm where we see people who are, really, really pro-death penalty, and the usual argument people try to give is that, oh, you're pro-death penalty, but you're anti-abortion. How can you be that way? You're pro-taking of life when they're out of the womb, but you really hate it when it's in the room. Like, that's one argument, but I don't find it to be a compelling argument. The argument that I find weirdly compelling or weirdly paradoxical to me is the idea that somebody is okay with the state having a monopoly on violence. Like, they can manage violence perfectly fine, but you don't think that they would be responsible managing healthcare. That's the confusing part to me. You get people who, and I'm not saying Asmon does this, though he might, he's rich enough to be that kind of asshole, but it confuses the shit out of me. It really does. Asina Salon, thank you very much for your subscription. 55 months? Jesus fucking Christ. But it just confuses the shit out of me, because you get people who do legitimately hold those positions and say, I don't trust the government with our healthcare. Okay, cool. So why do you trust the government with a gun? Why do you trust the government with a lot of guns? Tal says, serious questions as you're nearing on the subject. Since you're not a fan of the police, but what's your opinion on correctional officers that work in the prison system? So here's the thing. My issue with police is not the individual officers. My issue with the police is how we handle our law enforcement as a whole. I feel like we do not handle our law enforcement very well. People who are working as correctional officers, you're just a member of a system. You're not the perpetrator on the system, and I hope that you do well in whatever job you have. But like, I'm not going to sit there and say that an individual person who happens to be a police officer is automatically a terrible person because they wanted to do law enforcement. I think law enforcement is necessary for having a legitimate society. I think it's incredibly important to have that ability within your society. The issue is how we do it. The issue is execution. In more ways than one.
I'm happy. I vote for this. Thank God. I've been waiting on this for a while.
Thinking about this.
Based on the word of who? The military. The best word I got.
Based on the word of who? The military. You know, they got a perfect track record. Why would the military ever do a war crime?
And by the way, do you really think this is a fishing? You really think these are all fishing boats? You think
Nobody's saying that they're all fishing boats. Not a single person is saying they're all fishing boats. And Asmon is a manipulator for trying to argue that. Nobody is saying they're all fishing boats. We are saying that when you have this carte blanche way of responding to these boats off the coast, you will inevitably hit a fishing boat. You will inevitably hit a civilian. The argument isn't that these are all fishing boats. The argument is that there is a non-zero amount of fishing boats.
It's a fishing submarine? What are you thinking, man? You really putting yourself in that situation where you believe that shit? Absolutely fucking not. Will you just skip voting this? I did, because I didn't think it was going to happen. Yeah, this is the shit I would like. I'll tell you this. Whoever is going to do this is the guy I'm going to vote for, because this guy is keeping me safe.
How? How is he keeping you safe? I'm just curious. Because, like, I understand the idea that it's keeping you safe. Like, I understand where it's coming from, because we have this idea that, like, drugs existing is causing America to be unsafe. But I feel like the way that we handle drugs, the way that we respond to cartels, the way that we fucking create them, the way that our CIA creates cartels, we did that with the Bloods and the Crips. That's a thing that we did as a nation. I feel like we destabilize things as a nation because it is expedient to people who are in power. That's the part that gets me. Why would you fucking celebrate that? I feel like you're an idiot. But just calling Asmon an idiot doesn't really do anything. It doesn't solve any problems. It doesn't teach you anything. It doesn't mean anything. Also, Cyberchill says, is he implying that the cartels have submarines now? I fucking love Meteor Golem. Thank you for the subscription. I don't know if they do or not. But I know that if we keep on bombing random fucking boats, we're gonna hit a civilian. And the claims have been that we've already done it. Gee, Stygander, thank you for resubscribing as well. And that starts us on a hype train. Kind of a weird thing to get hyped about, but hey, if you want to support the channel and what I do, then here's where you do it. Also, just a side thing, I know that we're like 27 minutes into the recording, but if you are watching this over on YouTube, I just want to know your opinions on here. Like, is this a thing that you support? And if so, why? And if you don't support it, I'd also like to know your arguments for that too, because sometimes there's perspectives here that I simply don't consider because I'm only one guy, and it makes sense that there's going to be stuff that I glance over. So, hey, let me know your thoughts. And I also want to make a pitch to you. Again, late in the video, I know, but if you value generally honest and fair political analysis, I feel like I'm not being super fair to Asmon, but at the same time, I don't care in this situation. If you generally value fair and honest political analysis that tries to make politics a little less miserable to engage with, then consider subscribing to the channel. If you're on YouTube, it's free. If you're on Twitch, we're in the middle of a hype train right now. Why not go ahead and throw money at me? That's a fucking cool thing to do. Anyway, subscribe and tell a couple friends what I'm doing over here, both on Twitch and on YouTube, and I would greatly appreciate it. That said, let's get back to the madness here.
Everybody else is fucking around.
Context of Ukraine. And right now, Russian soldiers are being accused of war crimes, and their cases...
And you know what's going to happen? Nothing. Because the entire idea of a war crime is a joke.
How? Wait, is that really the take Asmon's going to run with? War crimes are a joke? Like, is that... Okay, so he actually is just a Nazi then. Like, there's only one kind of person that thinks that the idea of a war crime is a joke, and that's somebody who would support the Third Reich and their war crimes. Like, I'm sorry. God, I feel in a weird spot, because I want to take the Nazi thing back, but it's also not super untrue, given the context. Like, I feel like anybody that says that the idea of a war crime is a joke is just an idiot who would end up supporting an abusive regime merely by proxy. Said Nazi or NVE. I don't know what an NVE is. I'm not sure what those are. Sylvie says he's trying really hard with the rage bait. That's the other thing about this. It could just be rage bait, but I also think that Poe's Law is a super important thing for us to recognize. Somebody taking the rage baity position, even if they don't believe it, still creates a lightning rod where other people are going to ascribe themselves to that position because they find your version of the position compelling. Nah, don't, Suris. He's on that LV. Okay, no, don't take it back. Asmon is one at this point. But see, here's the thing, though. I am willing to take it back because I use the term Nazi to describe somebody who is on board with wiping out of racial minorities, religious minorities, minorities on sexuality, all that stuff. I am okay with calling somebody a Nazi when they engage in Nazi behavior. Simply thinking war crimes are a joke is not the only criterion for that. You can just be an idiot and do that. So I wouldn't say Nazi, but definitely Nazi sympathizer is probably the one that I would use here. Definitely. Old Gus says a lot of NVEs also happen to be Nazis because race war is a motivation for their accelerationism, but some have other motivations for their violent extremism or nihilistic behavior. I don't know what an NVE is. Like, Old Gus, I don't know what that acronym is for. I've probably heard it before, but I do not know what it is in reference to. He's a white supremacist or very close to one. I think I've heard him say things like that, especially in regards to Gaza, when he said it was okay to, genocide the fucking Palestinians. Sakura says nihilistic violent extremist. Okay. If that's what it is, then yeah, I guess maybe. Nihilistic, sure, we could probably use that to ascribe to Asmon. Native valve endocarditis. Nihilistic violence. Okay, cool. Cool. I appreciate you giving the clarification on that. That said, let's continue.
It's a joke that the big countries put together so they can enforce it on smaller countries. But you think that you think like, bro, we could do anything that we wanted. It wouldn't fucking matter. Same with China, same with Russia. You think Putin is going to ever go to jail? You think somebody from Russia is ever going to go to jail after the fucking Ukraine war is over? Not a fucking thing is going to happen. The war crimes are not for America. They're for Uganda. They're for Madagascar. They're for Bangladesh. That's the way it is. I'm shocked. The Hague has no jurisdiction in America? They don't have any jurisdiction in a place that, like, every law is only as strong as its enforcement mechanism. And if they can't tell you what to do, then they don't fucking matter. So that's the way it is.
So here's the thing. I actually agree with him on this. I actually agree with this perspective. Of all the things that Asmon has said, I agree with this. Calling something a war crime only has merit in a world where you can enforce literally anything in regards to that war crime. Now, here's the thing, though. The nihilistic perspective, at least the one that Asmon is ascribing, is the one where there's nothing we can do about it, therefore it's not a war crime. I think that's the perspective of a moron. I think finding a way to better enforce war crimes is an important thing to do. That's the next conversation of how to actually engage with that. Now, granted, there is a thread here in Change My View that I want to read real quick, just because this is a version of the argument, and it's going to be a little more eloquent than what Asmon says. I'm like 100% sure of it. War crimes are not a thing people at war care about. They are not enforceable, and no country in a war is worried about war crimes when the alternative is losing the war. They are ideal standards on how to conduct war, made by people who won war by abiding by none of them, but wanted to demonize the loser of the war and hold them solely responsible. Basically, war crimes only exist for posturing or punishing. No victor will ever be charged with war crimes. They are a form of punishing the losers of war, an updated version of the war guilt clause from the Treaty of Versailles, and that is it. The Nuremberg trials existed to blame Germany for World War II, and more importantly, in response to the Holocaust, to explicitly hold the Nazi ideology as directly responsible. That was a one-time thing, not a change in the game signaling a new enlightened approach to war. There's no such thing as a war crime if you win. These days, they only get brought up so that nations not at war can judge those fighting from a stance of moral superiority. You can wish nations at war would be more humane, but unless it's your people and land being burned, your judgment on the morality of conflict does nothing but make yourself feel better while condemning those fighting for their lives. So, here's the thing. I somewhat agree and somewhat disagree, because if a nation is invading another nation, then technically the soldiers are fighting for their lives. but that doesn't actually mean anything. Because you could be fighting for your life after you invade a nation. That's a thing that we've done. Ninja says, tell that to the people who've been convicted of war crimes. Let's actually see here who all actually got convicted of war crimes. Let's see. Let's try to actually see what the list of war criminals looks like. So, war crimes. The American Civil War has had a bunch of Confederates that were deemed as war criminals. There were several people convicted in World War I, several people convicted in World War II. Anything after that, though, like that's God, the list from World War II is long. Let's see here. Jesus. Oh, we have war criminals from Romania. We have war criminals from Slovakia. That all looks like it's within the realm of World War II. What about the United States? Oh, interesting. Even people in the United States got accused of war crimes and got convicted. We had Horace T. West, an American soldier who was convicted of a premeditated murder committed at Biscari. Louis Till, an American GI executed for a murder and 2 rapes committed during the Italian campaign. Oh, wow. It's so weird. It's so weird when you say that war crimes aren't a thing and they're not important, but we actually have people from the United States who have been convicted of war crimes, even though we've won the wars where we got people convicted of war crimes in. That's so weird. That's so strange. Also, if one of those war crimes is about rape, I feel like trying to defend that is a very stupid thing. Yugoslavia, Pacific Theater, a lot of people convicted in Japan. Okay, let's see here. Guatemalan Civil War. A lot of people convicted in there. The Bangladesh Liberation War. A lot of people convicted during that. Okay, so there's a lot of instances of people being committed to war crimes or being accused of war crimes and getting convicted of them well after World War II. War in Afghan... Wait a minute! Wait a minute! People in the United States got convicted of war crimes for what they did in Afghanistan? Wow, that's so weird. It's almost like Asmongold doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. That's so weird. It's almost like when you look into the concept of war crimes and who's been tried in war crimes, you actually do find that people from the nations that should not be convicted of war crimes, according to Asmongold, do get convicted of war crimes. Weird. What a strange situation. It's so awkward. Old Gus says, I mean, political dogmatism is famously not smart, so I guarantee you someone has defended war criminals who are rapists. Yeah, probably. Probably. Let's do a little bit more of the Asmon video. Just a tiny bit more of the Asmon video. You know, why not? Why not? He's given us such great nuggets of information so far.
The International Court of Justice, because they're killing prisoners, Ukrainian armed combatants who are prisoners.
Nothing's ever gonna happen.
And they're killing them instead of, you know, keeping them as prisoners. So, I mean, here...
I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Okay, so, how many of you have a grandparent who, when you're talking with them, they nod along to what you're saying and they say, yeah, like every 10 fucking seconds? How many of you have had that experience with another human being? Be it a grandparent or literally anybody else. I can't stand being in those conversations. I will actively just stop talking, look at the person, and tilt my head and go, do you want me to continue or do you want to speak? Because you seem to be doing a lot of speaking. Why do Asmon's eyebrows raise up and down whenever he talks? So, before I knew Asmon was a shitlord, the eyebrows were what turned me off to the content. I'm not even kidding. It was the eyebrows that I could not stand. And now it's his opinions. But God, it's like a weird tick. Anytime I hear somebody do the I'm just like, okay, obviously you're not listening. Obviously you don't give a shit. I don't give a shit anymore about this conversation because you don't seem to either. Cybershill says the difference is they're usually more than willing to let me rant about my hyperfixation. They just don't quite understand, but they know it makes me happy. Asina says the white rebalancing. What do you mean the white rebalancing?
Here we have an example of an actual war and war crimes accusation. So here,
this is the mind of a Karen is just being shattered. It's just being shattered. They can't even imagine this.
what does this do, in terms of U.S. moral authority?
Putin's actual war criminal.
There's reporting this week of Israel.
I like how he says nothing's going to happen, but we actually have a list so far. It's not a big list yet, but we actually do have a list of people from Russia who have been convicted of war crimes. When you say nothing's going to happen, and yet we actually have evidence of that happening, weird. God, it's so easy to not be incorrect about these things, but Asmon seems to do... I mean, he's literally proudly said he does zero research whenever he says anything. So it makes sense that he would just get shit wrong a lot.
Of IDF soldiers killing Palestinian prisoners, Hamas prisoners.
I believe it.
How can we go to Israel and say, like, you shouldn't have done that? Or
how could we have done that before this? You really think this is the first bad thing the United States has ever done? Nobody's
claimed that, and the fact that you argue against that straw man shows you don't know how to argue against an actual point.
Even if this is true, that we blew up a boat, there was a bunch of random-ass people, do you really think that this is the first time this has happened?
Nobody's argued it's the first time, and people in the United States have been accused of war crimes and have been convicted on a tribunal for war crimes before. Yeah, it may not be the first time. That doesn't mean anything. That's a statement with no basis whatsoever. Also, how's it going, Super Loco? Welcome to the stream.
It's crazy. And also, by the way, they've been doing this for years. They've been doing this for years. Do you think Israel, like, why is it that, like, I mean, if they were doing this in the past and we couldn't get them to stop doing the torturing and the killing of the prisoners, what makes you think that we can do it now?
So there's a difference between what was going on with Israel before and what's going on with it now. And that difference is national conversation. So the national conversation around Israel was largely one that was not being had by damn near anybody unless they were just anti-Semites. That conversation was not happening. Now that conversation is happening. Politicians generally will not do anything unless they are forced to. And this is a thing that if any of you want to get involved in local politics, you need to understand. Politicians will never do jack shit unless they feel they absolutely have to. If politicians feel like their constituents don't care about a problem, they're not going to advocate in favor of anybody in regards to that problem. Up until recently, the United States as an apparatus has been completely in favor of Israel. And if you asked any random Joe Schmo on the street, they would say, well, yeah, of course it's okay to be in line with Israel. Who cares? Like, that's the general opinion of most people in the US. That opinion is slowly starting to change as people are realizing that Israel is actively engaging in a genocide against the Palestinians. People's opinions on the situation change as they get more context, and that is a good thing. You would hope that people would have all the information all the time, but nobody can. Nobody can. People have lives to live. People have family to look out for. People have friends to hang out with. People have video games to play. They have all kinds of distractions, and there's nothing wrong with having those distractions. We live in a system where people need those distractions to keep their mental health above board. But you take those people who have those distractions of friends, family, games, books, movies, entertainment, food, everything. You take those people and ask them, hey, do you know what's going on, past international waters? Most of them are going to say, I have no idea. And that's generally the consensus you're going to get from damn near everybody. When that conversation starts changing is when people start getting more context. And people get more context when the news actually starts telling them what's going on in other areas. The news on all sides is directly responsible for our ability to contextualize things in other nations, because we don't seek out information about what's going on in Ukraine or Russia or Israel or anything unless it is force-fed to us because we have too much to deal with in the States already. Ninja said, that is media manipulation, kind of. Nobody talks about the woman abuse in Muslim countries, but they do, though. People do talk about the abuse in Muslim countries. Super Logo says, I'm not American, by the way. Okay. Not really concerned over your nationality. Where are you from, though? Out of curiosity. Like, people do talk about those abuses in Muslim countries. They do. Maybe not as much as they should. I agree. But the question then becomes, what would be the follow-up there? What would be the follow-up conversation? Trying to change them? Because that's what I would like, but how would you do that? Axo says they do actually, they just never shut up about it in an Islamophobic way. Yep, see, there's this weird thing that happens where people tend to be very, very anti, like, the Muslim faith, but they do it in a way that causes them to be against the exact people who tend to be victims of that faith. Do you know who usually ends up being the victim of Muslim ideology? Typically, it's other Muslims. Typically, it's people who were born in Muslim countries that are theocracies. Those are the people that end up being victims of that religious ideology. Much like how typically the people who are victims of, Christian nationalists tend to also be Christians, because they are just part of the majority religion. The way we talk about these things is super important. My problem with Asmon is I feel like he flippantly talks about these things in a way that celebrates violence and being cruel. And I don't think that that's useful. I think it's kind of stupid, actually.
Like, it's the entire premise of this is ridiculous.
Russia.
Yeah.
I can't wait till you're banned.
This arena.
People are mad. Like, so you're mad that I'm saying?
Super Loco says communists killed 10 times more people than the Nazis. Oh boy, here we go. Here we go. Super Loco, you up for a conversation? Because you seem to have opinions. You seem to have opinions. And I am willing to have that conversation. That's all we got here on Asmongold, though. He celebrates people getting bombed, even when we don't have full context. Anyway, that's all for that one. Hey, you made it to the end. I want to give an extra thanks to the patrons who allow me to do this full time. I want to thank Aaron Rail, Astral, Britzkrieg, Jemshin, Poundini, Red Joker, Victoria, Jonas, Craig, Tarika, Fireshard, Smiling GM, John, Dren Hadamada, Creeper, Sagitta, I'm not saying that last part, Valis of Sereth, Ottoman Angel, Rooster Rachel, and Fire Panda, who are all my $20 and up patrons.